common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And joining us now, we have the great investigative journalist, Peter Schweizer, of course, wrote Blood Money, and hosts the Drill Down also podcast. And Peter, let's get first off, I want to ask you about China, but I also want to get to this other wild news that came down just a little bit ago. We heard from Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and he comes out and says, you know what, we're looking into Russian disinformation in the 2024 election. Somehow we left out the 51 intel agents that seemed to help Hunter Biden and Joe Biden a lot in the last term.
Yeah, it's kind of 2016, isn't it? We've heard this script before. Look, I mean, Russia is going to try to do things to manipulate the election. But what they're forgetting here is that the big player now, and the FBI has acknowledged this, the Wall Street Journal had a front page piece over the weekend. The big player in this election is China as far as foreign powers are concerned. And they have a massive effort online disinformation. They absolutely prefer the Biden administration to the Trump administration. And yet the White House is focusing on Russian disinformation. They're focusing, I think, on sort of the minor threat and leaving the big one out of the picture because, again, they are politicizing intelligence. They're not giving the full a picture of what's going on, and they're choosing to focus on one part of the intelligence assessment which favors them politically in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We have George Venizelos, also a former New York FBI here, the head of it there for many years. George?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, right now, China is the biggest threat against us right now, followed by Iran. The Russians they're dealing with a war that they're dealing with now. They have their own problems in their country.
And George, I think President Biden has given China a pass and Iran a pass Iran is guilty as sin. They're the ones that hired the terrorists. Right. And China seems to be doing whatever they want. They're trying to attack the Philippines now, and they've laid off Taiwan. I don't know. What say you?
The problem we have now, we're playing catch up. China's been doing this for years, many years, decades. They've been trying to influence. They have a lot of money they spend in this country. They buy politicians. They influence the way of life. I wouldn't put it past me if the Sanctuary City stuff is all part of them influence. The politicians to think this way, to try to destroy this country. It's crazy.
Peter, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think George is exactly right, and John as well. I mean, look, China is the senior player here, and the fact of the matter is that China and Russia, in a way, are joined at the hilt, but China's the senior partner. Russia is isolated internationally, so they are focused on their alliance with China. They're selling natural resources to China. And China is very aggressively working online, as I lay out in Blood Money, and this recent Wall Street Journal report confirms. There is at least 1,000 Chinese military officers. All they do is go online, posing as Americans on places like Facebook and Twitter X, saying, terrible things about Trump or saying divisive things that are designed to rip the country apart. And yet the White House does not want to talk about that, and they don't want to really talk about TikTok either. Yeah,
you know what I noticed today, Peter, from the press conference, and George, we were talking about this earlier. Yeah. He comes out, Garland says, oh, Russia did this. They're posting this on social media through RT Russia Today. And then, there's this little thing with Iran and this little thing with China. Now let's go back to Russia. Right. It was like a blip. I mean, it just seems so political to me.
Yeah, it is. And by the way, maybe George can comment on this too. The fact of the matter is the Russians are like a blunt force instrument when they try to do this. They're not subtle. They're not sophisticated. Right. It's easy to defect. The Chinese are much more sophisticated, and it's much more widespread than anything Russia's doing.
Absolutely. And also the Chinese are very long-term thinking, around the world. They're buying all the ports now. They're doing a lot of things, buying farmland. They're doing all this stuff. It's all a big plan. And this, we got to wake up. Both sides are going to wake up. The Democrats got to wake up and start pushing back on this.
And Judge Weinberg, real quick.
Peter, good to talk to you again. There's another problem. There's the infiltration. The infiltration, for example, in San Francisco, you had armed people in San Francisco going after pro-democracy opponents of the Chinese regime. So they were bought and paid for. There were Chinese in this country fighting their fellow Chinese, and these guys were on the payroll of the Communist Party of China. And nobody's talking about San Francisco being a war zone.
Yeah, no, Judge, that's a great point. And these are you've talked about this on this show before, too, these sort of secret police departments that the Chinese have used to sort of enforce the CCP line, especially against ethnic Chinese. There's one of those, by the way, in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and it's run by a friendship organization. It's one of only 7 in the United States of these secret police stations. It cooperates with a group called Minnesota Global, which is close to Governor Walz. And so Governor Walz has criticized the police in the Twin Cities for their treatment of people. He's gone after law enforcement repeatedly. He has not said one thing about this Chinese police department that is operating illegally to intimidate people in China. People need to wake up about this and be honest about it.
Peter, that's your next book, to talk about the infiltration in this country of the politicians.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's your next book there, Peter. Thank you very much, Peter. Great stuff. You got to come back on soon. We love having you on.
And
anytime.
Thank you, Peter.